Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about the struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Schmitt. We are in the middle of a series about leadership models. And if you haven't been listening to the first two episodes in the series, this is the third one, go back and listen at least to the first one because that one is the basis for all these other models. And it can help us understand how these ones are going to work. Now, the reason we're spending so much time understanding these models is not because I want you to become model experts or because I want you to know all this textbooky type stuff. I do want you to know it, but ultimately where this comes into the practical application is that when we can remember these models, when we can have them become part of our belief system, then we can utilize them to operate more effectively and really the way we want to be operating in stressful situations. So we can pull it out in that ad hoc conversation that somebody comes up to us and starts talking at us. And then we have to turn on our coaching brain in order to do that. We can just show up the way we want to show up, the way we practice showing up, and the way we know is going to get the best action and the best behaviors from our team. Because when we can have the best behaviors from our team, we get the best results. And the way we get our best behaviors from our team is our best behaviors from ourselves. So this takes us back to the third model. So in the first model, we walked through the thoughts, feelings, behaviors, results wheel. So this model that I say is the basis for everything. It's come from psychology, so it's utilized a lot in cognitive behavior therapy. And it's just rooted in how our brains work and how our brains function and how we rewire our brains so we can have the behaviors we want. So that's the basis for everything that we're doing here. Last episode, we talked about the ABC model, which is setting an antecedent, so a rule, a policy, putting the belief system in place, observing a behavior, and then having a consequence, whether that consequence is nothing, or the consequence is, wow, great job, thank you, or the consequence is some kind of a feedback or even potentially a punishment. So those are important in order to get the behaviors that we want from our team and really ourselves as well. Because again, our behaviors are derived from what we believe will happen, which is the consequence. So again, that episode is about consistency and about how we can get people behaving in the way that we want them to, and that includes ourselves too. And today's episode, we're going to switch gears a little bit, but we're going to talk through a coaching model. I learned this model many, many moons ago back in my manufacturing days, and I really ingrained it into my brain. I don't think I fully understood the application of it until later on, until I started using it more. So that's part of I want to close that gap for you guys to make sure you understand where to use it, how to use it, and maybe when not to use it as well. But it's also just a great guideline and a great reminder to walk through these stages when you're in either ad hoc coaching or even real coaching sessions, but ultimately when you're doing problem solving with a team member. So the model we're going to go through today, we can call it a lot of things. I've heard it called the GROW model. I've heard it called the double diamond model, but essentially what it is a model to guide you through a coaching conversation, or even more specifically, a problem-solving conversation. You may, in your workplace or even in your life, have a robust problem-solving process that you use. There's DMAIC, there's D&D, there's a lot of different ones out there. They all ultimately are following the same process, which is you have an issue or you have something that you need to change. You find the root cause, you come up with the solution, and you go do the solution. So those are the kind of the basics. And this model helps you remember that and helps you follow that same problem-solving process, even in a casual conversation. So again, the reason we need to ingrain it into our brain so that we can bring it out in the casual conversation when it's needed. Because if you're a leader, especially if you have a lot of team members in a lot of different areas or a lot of different pieces going on, you're going to have people come at you with problems when you're not ready for it. So you need to be ready and prepared when these things come to you. And a great way to do this is having these models into your brain and into your behaviors. And what that means is you should practice them. So let's go through the GROW model. I'm going to pop a slide up. So if you're on YouTube, you can have a look at it so you can visually see it. And I do recommend that. So if you're just listening to it, maybe pop onto YouTube and fast forward to that little section where you can see the slide, because getting the visual in your brain is going to be extremely helpful. If you don't have time to get on YouTube, I am going to describe it. But again, having a picture in your brain, something that you go to in your brain, is going to make it stick better so you can use it better. So let me just share this quickly for those who are on YouTube. So this is our GROW model. So GROW, it's an acronym, of course, like most models. I think every model is almost the only one I need an acronym for the first one. But GROW model is, so G for goal. So what that is the issue or the thing you want to get to. So it might be the goal that you want to, achieve, or it might be a problem that you're facing, but ultimately there's the goal of kind of what you want to see happen or what you need to see change. So there's your goal. Your R for GROW is root cause. So what you're going to do is, from this concern or issue or goal, you're going to start asking some questions, and you're going to guide your person or even yourself in reality down to a root cause. So if you're looking at this on YouTube, you'll see that this top box is actually, it's a square turned sideways. So it's a diamond. So this is why it's called the double diamond. So this first diamond starts with the G on the top, and from the G, from that top vertex, you're going to start expanding out until you get to kind of the widest point of this diamond. And then you're going to start narrowing down until you get to the root cause. So what this is a reminder of is that you're going to be asking very open-ended questions to get a whole lot of ideas going as to what might the problem be. And then you're going to start asking maybe close-ended questions, or a little bit more narrowing down type questions, like you've got a couple of ideas going here. Where do you want to go? So you're trying to narrow down to a root cause. Now, when you're in these coaching sessions, you're literally just talking through it. So you're not necessarily going to know for a fact the root cause. And this is maybe where it differs a bit from problem solving. But the idea is, here you've got a concept of what might be the problem. So you've come up with a root cause, and I'm going to put it in quotation marks because it's probably not the scientifically proven root cause, because we're talking about behaviors typically. So you get to a root cause. Now you have to come up with the solution. So the O is to get some options. So what are some options that we could have? And so now we start into the second diamond. So this is, again, open-ended questions as we are expanding our ideas, and we're coming up with a whole lot of options. Little trick of the trade here. You're going to be asking, so what's some ideas? What's one thing you could do? And they're going to come up with probably that, well, I could just do better. Okay. What's another idea? What's something else? And my trick here is that there's going to be a point when you feel like, they've got a lot of options. Right? And it might be 3, it might be 5. What I want you to do is I want you to ask, and what else? And what else could you do? So when it feels like they've gotten to the edge, you need to, as the coach, as their leader, it's your job to expand them out a little bit. So I want you to ask, and what else could you do? So stretch them a little bit farther. You might want to go 2 or 3 if you know they could be pushed that far. So stretch them out even farther, because sometimes that's when the best ideas come, because we all have the standard 1 or 2, maybe even 3 ideas that we think are going to be the solution to the problem. But when you can stretch them to think a little bit harder, dig a little deeper, get a little bit creative, because they have the creative juices. And honestly, this is what we want. This is what we want from our team, is to be able to go beyond the norm and stretch down a little bit. So come up with lots of options. So don't forget to ask and what else a couple of extra times. Once they have a whole bunch of options, now you go back to the close-ended questions. So this is, again, that bottom half of the diamond. So we're coming back down to the next point. So you're going to start to say, okay, well, let's start talking through them. So you might be talking through some of the options. You might be saying, is there anything that we just, we want to get rid of? first off, okay, well, that one maybe doesn't work for us, or even ask more open a little bit, like which one feels like you might want to investigate it. And so we'll just like start asking questions. So now you're asking a little bit more definitive, and then eventually some closed-ended questions to get to this W, which we call the will, or the will you do it? So this is when we get, okay, what's their level of buy-in around it? And this is you might get, this makes total sense because they've gone through this process, but you might find that there's still some apprehension. And this is when we can start to dig into, okay, so what's in the way? What feels wrong? And it might be that they're not really bought into it. Maybe they were telling you what you wanted to hear through this grow model. And it's worth going back through and saying, okay, well, hey, it's not what I need to know. It's what you need to know to get through this. So let's back it up. This is a trust building time when you can get them to work beyond the telling you what they think you want to hear phase and into getting to a real solution. So this is again where this model helps, because now when you get to that will, how do you feel about doing it? Do you feel like you're going to get it done? When you get to that will part, now you get to uncover some of these apprehensions or uncover some of the things that may have gone wrong in the grow model. So you might get that apprehension because they didn't give you what they really thought was the problem, but you also might have something that's gotten in the way. So maybe it's a trust with themselves. Maybe they don't believe they can do it. When we can uncover these apprehensions that they may have within themselves, now we can start to get through those things that get in the way. That takes us back to the first episode in this series. So make sure you listen to that if you haven't listened yet. But these beliefs and these deep-seated programs, these deep-seated thoughts, these things that are actually getting in the way of us behaving the way we want to behave, we need to uncover those, even sometimes with the simplest of solutions, and sometimes even in very technical solutions, because there is a belief that we can't go beyond what normal or what our thoughts about ourselves are. So we can get in our own way, in our own mind so much. And this model is extremely helpful in making sure that we're committed to it and that we've really brainstormed through this process. So some areas where this is useful, because this is not how you're going to run your one-on-one weekly or bi-weekly trust building coaching sessions. This is not the agenda for that. So please don't think it is. It is not. It might be a portion of that agenda, right? Because typically that agenda is going to look like, how is it going? What's going well? What isn't going well? How are the goals doing? Where are you stuck? And this is where this part comes in. When you find a point that someone is stuck, or when you find a problem where they come to you with the problem, this is where this grow model comes into play. Because what you're doing is you're walking them through a more basic version of a problem-solving methodology. You may find when you're in that GR section that you're actually using problem-solving tools like why, or you're using a fishbone diagram, depending on what you're actually talking about here, what the problem is that they brought up. So you might be actually using some of these formal problem-solving process tools. Fantastic. That is great. The grow model still applies because you still want to brainstorm ideas and then maybe test them. That's where the tools come in, and then come down to what the root cause is. So you might still be using them. However, it's not always required, because sometimes the block is, or the problem is, a little bit more inside the brain, doesn't, necessarily fall into something you're going to fishbone out. You know what? I bet you can. And I have some harebrained ideas that I think you can, but this isn't necessarily always required. But again, the guideline, and to walk people through the brainstorming of what the root cause might be, and then determining at least one of the root causes, and then brainstorming some options to get through it, and coming down to what are you exactly going to do, and writing that SMART goal to achieve. So I want to touch on the root cause portion just a little bit there, because I did mention that you might not always have the real root cause, and it might just be a root cause. So a time when you might not get there. I've talked through on several different episodes about constructive feedback. And a great process for that is, this is what I expected. This is what I've observed. Now tell me about it. That now tell me about it is when this grow model comes to play. So they're going to start talking through reasons, excuses, whatever it might be, but they're going to start talking through things. And you're going to come to one answer as to why it happened. And it might not be the answer. It might be, like we talked about, the answer that they thought you wanted to hear, or that it should be, or the really good excuse that they really and truly believe, or maybe it's all they want to deal with. And that's okay in this instance, sort of. We're going to talk through that in a second. You might get there, and that might be all they're willing and capable of giving you in that moment. So you take that and you go and you do the second diamond, and you talk through, you ask open-ended questions. Okay, so you're telling me that, the reason you've turned your assignment in late is because you didn't understand the assignment, you didn't understand the directions around it. Okay, so what could be a way that we don't have that happen again? How can we make that better? So you're going through options. You're listing out a whole bunch of options, remembering to ask, and what else? Oh, and what else? And what else could we do to help? Right? Like, so you're getting real big here. And then you're coming down to so what are we going to do the next time around? What's that thing that you can do to make sure you fully understand? And you're going to get them to commit to that. Now, this is where we kind of almost test the root cause. And this happens in every single problem solving situation anyway. It's just going to look differently when we're talking about human behavior conversations. What you're going to do is you're going to continue to observe the behavior. So going back to episode 2, we set the antecedent, which was, we're going to do this thing the next time this comes about, right? We're going to observe the behavior, and then there will be a consequence. And that consequence should at the very least be another conversation that looks like, this is what we agreed to. This is what I've observed. What are your thoughts? One more time. And, now you can say, okay, so the last time we said this was going to happen, did it? Well, what happened? What got in the way of that happening? Was this not the root cause? So now we can start to peel back the layers of the onion. So we always want to think the best of our people. And ultimately, there might be a lot of woundedness, a lot of distrust around someone who's above them that is stopping them from sharing root causes. And ultimately, they may not fully understand it because it could be some deep-seated belief that they have. There are a lot of behavior systems and family systems that we have, like within our families of origin, that teach us to behave in certain ways and that teach us truths that aren't necessarily true. So sometimes we have to help people unwrap that through a repeated process. So, hey, we said this was it. It's still not solved. So what's next? So there are these this is how we get to the bottom of it. And this grow model is a fantastic reminder to brainstorm ideas as to what could have possibly happened. So doing that with your team member, and then brainstorming options, remembering to stretch them one more, and then get that commitment at the end of what you're going to do. And that should be something that should be writable in a statement. Like, you should be able to write that down in a simple statement. You're going to do this. It might be you're going to do this, this, and this, but it shouldn't be this wild, outlandish concept. It should be something very concrete that we can say. So the next time you get an assignment, you've said you're going to ask and clarify and write back an email that states what you believe will happen. Okay, great. I think this will work. I'm excited. Are you excited? Okay, good. And then you move forward. And then when it doesn't happen the next time, you have the same conversation again. Or when it does happen, and this is almost more important than the first one, because you've just asked somebody to behave outside their norm. So you have to go back and you say, we agreed to this, and I see that you did it. That's awesome. Thank you. How did it feel? How did it go? Does it make sense to do it that way again? And awesome. Is that going to work for you as an ongoing process? Perfect. I'll continue to support, because you know what? Changing behavior is hard, and I'm here to help. So using this model helps you uncover things faster than just a straight up conversation. Like, okay, you're late. Okay, set that alarm, go. And it helps to remind you as the leader to ask these questions, open-ended and closed-ended, to get to the answer. And then again, open-ended and closed-ended to get to another answer. So take this model, use it, abuse it. Just kidding. Don't abuse it, but use it with your team and get some real results. And I really want to hear how it's working for you. So if you've taken this and you've applied it with your coaching conversations, with your feedback conversations, let me know how it went for you. Let me know where you struggle. Let me know what went well and what didn't go so well for you, and where you could use some more support yourself. If you enjoyed today's episode, or if you know somebody who could really benefit from some of these model conversations, then like the episode, share it with a friend or a colleague, and leave a review, because this is how we get the word out. This is how we can get people all kinds of free information into their inboxes and into their lives so they can use it and create better teams and better businesses and better lives, both at home and at work. I will see you on the next episode of the Business Building Blocks podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmitt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.